Hi Yuka, you're taking us back to our top story, the situation in Iran. Oil prices fell today after last week's sharp rise after Donald Trump called on other countries to send warships to help get vessels through the Strait of Hormuz.
Yeah, even though that request has so far seemed to have been rebuffed by those countries that President Trump called on to make a move, oil prices eased significantly on Monday amid signs Iran is allowing some ships to sail through the Strait of Hormuz. The US's WTI settled at $93.50 a barrel, down 5.3% from the previous close. International benchmark Brent fell 2.8% at just above $100 a barrel. Now, global crude prices have surged 40% since the Iran war started, with both those benchmarks on Friday closing at their highest levels since the summer of 2022. Concern over supply eased somewhat after a Pakistan-bound oil tanker passed through the Strait of Hormuz with the transponder on, and tracking data showed some Chinese and Indian vessels also have transited the zone. The US Treasury Secretary, meanwhile, said Washington was willingly allowing Iranian oil tankers through the waterway.
Yuka, amid soaring energy costs, governments right around the world trying to contain the fallout.
Well, India is facing a cooking gas crisis, and Sri Lanka has reactivated a fuel rationing system first implemented during the country's 2022 economic crisis. Since Sunday, motorists have only been able to fill up 15 litres of fuel per day, while public transport has been allocated up to 200 litres per day. The government is also suspending all public ceremonies and cut civil servants' workdays to 4 per week in order to save energy. Meanwhile, Japan began its largest ever release of oil from its strategic reserves on Monday. The country committed to unlocking 80 million barrels from its emergency stockpiles, both government-held and private ones, as part of a concerted effort by members of the International Energy Agency. Now, the combined release of 400 million barrels agreed last week is the largest in the agency's history, and the head of the IEE on Monday said more could be unlocked if necessary, as he renewed his warnings about the severity of the current crisis.
The war in the Middle East is creating the largest supply disruption in the history of the global oil market. The volume of oil supply now offline is already higher than the supply loss during the oil shock of 1973.
Meanwhile, Donald Trump says his planned visit to China could be postponed.
Well, the US president said on Monday that the US side had requested to delay the visit by a month or so. This after delegations from both countries met in Paris over 2 days to lay the groundwork for the much-awaited trade talks between him and Chinese President Xi Jinping. Luke Trago reports.
For US officials, if Donald Trump delays a visit to China in 2 weeks, it'll have nothing to do with his asking Beijing for help with trade traffic in the Strait of Hormuz.
The postponement, if it happens, would be because the Commander-in-Chief of the United States military believes that he should stay in the United States while this war is being prosecuted.
US and Chinese delegations had been hammering out details in Paris over a meeting from the end of the month between the US president and Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping.
What we've concluded today really is the general terms of a work plan between now and the meeting between the presidents, with the idea that there'll be potential deliverables at that meeting.
After months of trade chaos and tit-for-tat tariffs, Washington and Beijing agreed to a truce of sorts last year and worked on stabilizing relations. China committed to buying 25 million tons of US soybeans a year for the next 3 years. The latest talks indicated Beijing could be open to further agricultural purchases, including poultry, beef and other crops, along with discussions over creating mechanisms to help manage both trade and investment issues. However, recent US moves to investigate burdens or restrictions to US trade targeted 60 economies, including China, and raised the spectre of further penalties, irking Beijing.
We express concern about the potential disruption and damage the possible outcomes of these investigations could cause to hard-won stable economic and trade relations between China and the United States.
Stability has long been key for China in international relations. While it maintains large oil reserves, Beijing is a major buyer of Iranian and Gulf oil, and its economy depends largely on trade. With an eye on the war in the Middle East, It recently revised its growth projections to their slowest level in 35 years.
Well, let's finish with a quick check on the markets, Yuka.
Well, as oil prices fell, stocks rebounded at the start of a new trading week. On Wall Street, the Dow Jones Industrial Average closed up 325 points, or 0.8%, while the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq both rose more than 1%. Nvidia's stock climbed after its CEO said the company could reap at least $1 trillion in revenue for its latest AI chips through 2027. Jensen Huang unveiled a new central processor and an AI system built on technology from Grok at the company's annual developer conference that started today. The $1 trillion forecast is double the revenue opportunity Nvidia had predicted for this year. And that's it from the business desk.
Yuka, thanks so much for that. Yuka Boy there.